Hello everyone, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining what is our AgriTech Awareness Week 2021 by Barclays Eagle Labs. So today our second session is all around collaborative AgriTech UK, and today's session is across the meadow, where to turn to for help. So today we have asked Belinda Clarke from AgriTech E, Sarah Carr from Farm 491 and Michael Gifford from Barn 4 to join us today to provide us with some tips and tricks on how effective collaboration is supporting both the agricultural industry and those businesses beginning their growth journey into the sector. So the topics discussed are an overview of options for you to think about to help you with your independent research and business decisions. They aren't intended as recommendations or advice. Remember as well that your business has its own individual circumstances, so the statements and views expressed may not be applicable or suitable for your business. So as I said, welcome to our AgriTech Awareness Week. I'm really glad you could join us today. My name is Wendy Hewitson, and I am the AgriTech Programme Manager at Barclays Eagle Labs. So we all know that the face of agriculture is changing, but how will AgriTech support you? And are you ready to realise its full potential? So we're trying to build on the launch of our Eagle Labs AgriTech programme and the launch of our Eagle Labs farm in Lincoln last year in October. So we're hosting this event to highlight the importance of innovation and collaboration in the agricultural sector across the whole of the UK. So through the AgriTech programme, we showcase innovations that have been created for or can be applied to the agricultural industry. Our vision is to support UK agriculture and the food supply chain to help it become the most digitally savvy farm force globally. And we do this through research, events, collaboration and projects that we hope helps the entire food supply chain from farmer to retailer understand how technology can support and accelerate their business. So the theme for this week focused on how collaborative the support network and structure is for the UK agri-food startups and those with technological advancements to help transform the sector. We want to showcase how far the support for the sustainability of the sector has come and what's coming next on the horizon. So I'm really privileged today to have some of those experts join me, where they hopefully can tell you more about how they've collaboratively worked together and how they're supporting the industry. So as experts in their field, showcase how they are supporting businesses on their growth journeys. So this is our second session, as I said, Collaborative AgriTech UK, across the meadow, where to turn to for help. So we now, as you can see, have Belinda Clarke from AgriTech E, Sarah Carr from Farm 491, and Michael Gifford from Barn 4. So rather than listen to me, I'd like each of those people just to give me a quick overview of who they are and what they do. So I'm going to hand over now to Belinda. Hi, Belinda, how are you?
Hi, Wendy, great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So I run AgriTech E, formerly known as AgriTech East, and we are the UK's longest established membership network organisation, bringing together this innovation ecosystem around informing and accelerating the journey of new innovations into the hands of farmers. And we've been going since 2014, and we have nearly 300 members now from across the UK and internationally. And we just wake up every morning excited about how innovation is playing its role in agriculture and horticulture. So really excited to be here.
Thank you, Belinda. And Michael Gifford, would you like to give an overview of who you are?
Hi, I'm Michael Gifford. I'm the Commercialisation Director at NIAB, which is a crop science research centre based in Cambridge. Within that role, I'm responsible for a lot of the collaborations we have, particularly with SMEs, but also with larger organisations. So that's working across our R&D teams into their development of their products. The other element of my role is we recently opened a new AgriTech incubator on our site at Park Farm in Cambridge, and I'm responsible for managing that. It's early days yet, so we're only 6 weeks in, I think, since we opened the doors.
Fabulous, so exciting. And Sarah Carr.
Hi Wendy, so I'm Sarah Carr and I'm head of Farm 491 and we're based in Cirencester and we are an AgriTech incubator. So we work with loads of different startups in the sector who are really creating some really exciting business ideas to really improve the future of food and farming. So we work with those right from idea stage through to sort of any way that we can help them going forwards and my main role really is to support them in their journey and really create that community, that ecosystem of agri-tech startups, and also search for collaborations and partnerships within the sector with other organisations who can really help these companies to grow and scale.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant introduction from everyone in the room. Thank you. So I think probably for me, there's a lot of change going on within agriculture itself, and probably highlighted, not necessarily just in the last 12 months, but over the course of time, there have been a few challenges. And so those challenges are historical, and some of them maybe just come into the fore at the moment. So if I can ask you first, maybe Belinda, where have you seen the most change in the last 12 months?
So maybe I can be the first to say pandemic and Brexit, and notwithstanding those, and maybe we'll come to those later, the really kind of driving potential that both of those have had around innovation. I think what we have seen is the number of companies that now are very well established as data companies. When I first started in 2014 doing this role, there were companies that were describing themselves as drone companies, or more of a technology company, and now the central role of data. And I think no more so than in the last 12 months, when everybody has really been thinking what the new Agriculture Act is going to mean for the UK, that has really helped sharpen the pencil in terms of really focusing down on how we can help farmers deliver value on their bottom line.
Thank you, Belinda. So perhaps, Michael, you could pick up on that, and sort of what are your thoughts around sort of the changes and the challenges in the last 12 months?
Well, there have been it's obviously been a very different 12 months to the ones that preceded it. I think the one thing I notice most is that it's now much easier to have short conversations with people you haven't met, because you don't have to travel, for an hour or two, and people don't feel they have to spend an hour or two with somebody who's traveled for an hour or two. So your whole day isn't taken up just having a quick chat with somebody and finding out what they do. Nowadays you can hop onto Zoom or Teams and just have that quick chat. On the flip side of that, I'm also noticing that there's much less casual chat, if that makes sense. So previously, the sort of what they call the water cooler conversations, and obviously in NIAB we don't have those luxuries, but the tap conversations, where you find out what your colleagues are up to and what other people who are visiting the building are up to, and even in the sort of margins of conferences and things where again you have a chat over a coffee, those I don't think the technology solutions, the Zooms and Teams, have quite managed to sort of work out how to solve those, despite a lot of people trying. And so there's a sort of mixture of really good communications and much easier to meet new people, but on the flip side, harder to get that sort of general feeling, what's, everything that's going on in the place. So goods and bads, those are the two big ones I've spotted in the last year. Yeah.
Great. So what about yourself then, Sarah? What kind of have you seen as the most change? Talking there, we were talking data, we're talking meeting people and such like.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely echo what Michael said in terms of being able to speak, I guess, more openly, more freely, more easily with people. So I've had a lot of conversations with international organisations over the past 12 months, more so than I have in a very long time, which has been great to learn more about different sectors, more about agriculture in different countries as well. And again, I've seen some new startups coming through, probably more so in the last 12 months, which, to be totally honest, I wasn't expecting. I thought the pandemic would make a lot of companies sort of take a huge step back and unfortunately wouldn't see anymore. But actually, I think it's given them opportunity to sit back, think about their business plan, think about some great ideas that they have, and give them that opportunity to take those ideas forward, see if they can make them viable, get out there and speak to farmers or whoever their end consumer is, and really, take the time to really understand how to progress forwards. I think as well that there have obviously been challenges over the past 12 months. I think funding wise, there's been quite a lot of challenges around investment or grant funding opportunities. So I think although yes, there's been some great positives, of course, there's been loads of challenges as well. So yeah, a bit of a balance between the both.
Great. So you're talking there about, the amount of startups that you've seen, and you've seen quite a few of these start to flourish in the last 12 months. What types of business, and why do you think this is the case, Sarah?
Yeah, I think really, I think we've all become a lot more aware, everyone, about the environment, about net zero, about the food we eat. And I think it's really made a lot of startups come forward who are really focusing on climate, the future of food and farming. You know, it's not going to be the way it has been for the past however many years. It is going to change. And I think consumers are now more aware of that. And I think these organizations, these startups are sort of joining in on that and starting to work, well, hopefully with consumers to understand what their needs are, what the farmers' needs are, and hopefully sort of, I guess, provide a stronger food supply chain for us. So yeah, definitely working towards that net zero, that environmental focus. I've definitely seen a lot more of that recently.
Fab. And yourself, Belinda, what types of business, or is it any specific sector that you've seen coming out over the last few months, last year or so?
Yeah, similar to Sarah, I think big focus on carbon, technologies to measure, monitor, and practices to measure, monitor, and be able to understand the carbon status of different types of soils and different practices. Also, we're seeing a lot of interest in alternative proteins, whether that's for human consumption and whether it's plant-based or lab-grown, and indeed additives for livestock, for cattle, to again help get that greenhouse gas emission down. And I think the other thing that's also been coming to the fore is, I suppose we would call it maybe bio-inspired or biomimetic, using biology to sit alongside traditional chemistry and sort of ironware, if you like, and seed breeding, but being able to sort of harness a bit of nature's own solutions as I guess we would call it integrated management, which isn't new, but a lot of businesses that are being able to understand much more about the physiological impact of interventions on crop and animal health and productivity. So there's a number of those are starting to come through, I think probably more than there have been in recent years.
Brilliant. So that quite nicely leads across to yourself then, Michael, with sort of crop interventions and such like. So what have you seen as, say, coming your way in the last sort of 12 months?
We're still seeing quite a variety of things coming through. The one that I see a lot of, actually, really strangely, is an awful lot of robotic weeding solutions, which in some way, I mean, years ago, I ran a herbicides company, and we weren't competing with robotic weeding solutions. Nowadays, it feels like everybody wants a laser or an electric zapper or something to deal with blackgrass. So that's an interesting one. I think robotics in general is actually interesting. I'm not sure that the weeding is the key, is the killer application. But with changes in the labour force, etc., robotics have got to have a part. I think the other thing that has become clear is that there's the opportunity for real systemic change. So I think people previously thought, okay, farming, that's been going on for thousands of years. It changes quite slowly. People don't, things happen, nothing changes overnight. And then suddenly we've got pandemic and we've got Brexit and we've got all these other things which have forced us to really change whole chunks of the world overnight. And I don't think people see farming as being stuck anymore, and it's a conversation again I've had with a number of completely separate people about the fact that this whole concept of putting seed into a ground, growing it, and then harvesting it and storing it and transporting it, etc. You can change massive chunks of that in a very short space of time. But equally, you have to do it with the farmers and the agronomists, because if you just try and do it with the technologists and the economists, you're not going to. You're going to fall flat. So I think that'd be my take on what we're seeing a lot of.
Brilliant. So you touched then on, the collaboration, pharma, tech companies and everything else. What do you think are the greatest challenges that some of those businesses have seen in the last 12 months? And I'll come to you first, Michael, to continue on from that last question.
Sorry, challenges to the farmers or challenges to the tech companies? Challenges,
well, it's whole, isn't it? It's interoperability between the whole sector. And where are the most challenges coming from? Is it that lack of collaboration from the farmer's point of view, or from the trusted advisors, or is it from tech speaking and putting everything in a language, in a system that we can understand?
Okay, I think there is still a bit of a gap. It's been there since I've been involved in AgriTech, which is quite a while now, that there's this slight disjoint between the tech companies that are coming out of, universities or spinning out of robotics firms, etc., and the farmers who are really there to look after the land, grow crops, and make money out of their businesses. And I still see too many AgriTech companies that haven't spent time talking to the farmers and indeed the agronomists, because actually agronomists are often the people making decisions on the farm. And as a result, they spend a lot of time and effort. The tech companies spend a lot of time and effort developing things that aren't quite right. Or even if they're good for the farm, they're not solving one of the 2 or 3 problems that the farmer's actually worried about. Because everyone's got limited bandwidth. If someone comes up and solves your 15th problem on your list, you haven't got time to talk to them because you're too busy trying to harvest or drill or whatever. You're too busy doing something that has to be done today. And I think the tech companies then get a bit sort of puzzled as to why their great ideas aren't being adopted. So yeah, I think there is still this communication piece, and it's one of the things we're working quite hard on at the moment is introducing tech companies to farmers. And I think all 3 organisations you've got here, all 4 if we include Eagle Labs, have got that very much drilled into the central sort of piece of what we do.
Yeah, as you say, it is a core value, I think, for each and every one of us here today, about that collaboration piece and about that bringing together of the farmer, the tech companies, the research, the academia. Perhaps yourself, Belinda, you could maybe talk around where you think the greatest opportunity or where you've seen the greatest collaborative approach, whether that's come from policy driven or whether that's come from academia or farmer led, really.
It's probably less likely to be policy. Policy is the enabler, I think, not the driver in this context. Sometimes it is the driver. In this context, I think it's the enabler. I mean, the good collaborations come when it's a win-win all round. So where there's a good business model, where there's a very clear value proposition. And I think that's one of the big challenges for everybody in this space, is that farmers are in this kind of tsunami of technology. We're all here trying to introduce technology companies to farmers, right? And there's a white noise of all this stuff going on, and actually it needs to be easy to integrate into an existing system, and that I think goes back to your point around interoperability. So for me, the 2 challenges which, if fixed, would then be opportunities, are around this white noise tsunami, where perhaps the value proposition of the technology isn't quite as crisp as it could be. How is my offering different from several others that the farmer will say, I've heard about all those before. No, mine might be very different. Let me take the time to really have clarity around that communication. And then the interoperability piece. We talk a lot with technology companies around the potential for interoperability with existing management software, equipment, and often it's still in a kind of, well, it could be interoperable, but the point is it's not. So there's a bit of a kind of barrier to entry there, in that you can't just take it out of the box, plug it in, and it works necessarily. So I think there are 2 things which have been challenges and could be real opportunities if they didn't exist. And
yourself, Sarah, then around sort of collaborative approaches, and as both myself and Belinda have said, that interoperability between the farmer, the technology, almost as you say, an API, a plug-in technology to existing concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the value proposition piece that Belinda talked about is absolutely true. I think for farmers, with so many new companies coming out, although we just said it's great that there's loads of new companies, how does a farmer choose which one to go for? Which one is the best? I already spoke to this drone company, so how are you any different? And I think it's such a challenge. And yeah, it's a tricky one to get over. And I think it definitely comes down again to speaking to the farmers. But I would say trust is a huge part of this sector. So farmers very much, they might deal with the same company they've been dealing with for years because they trust them, they know them. Even if the price wasn't quite right, they actually still might go with them because that trust is there, that relationship. So I would say it's that human element, that human interaction. Forget about the tech sometimes. I come across a lot of companies, like we've all just said today, who have been very tech focused for a few years. They've been doing that research at university. They come out, they start saying all these acronyms, using all this techie language, and none of us understand it. So how can you expect a farmer who wants to use a technology to understand it as well? So it really is just stripping back all of that nitty-gritty detail and just saying, this is how I can help your business, this is how I can improve your bottom line, and this is how I'm going to help your crops or help your animals. So it really is just that simplistic terminology, which is completely missing from the sector at the moment, I think. So I would say, yeah, that's definitely a huge challenge at the moment.
I think leading on from that, that also is, again, a massive opportunity, not just for us, but for everyone that's listening in today, is to talk about, you know, the collaborative approach. What are the opportunities going to be for the next 12, 24, 5 years time? And there's an awful lot of changes going on in the sector. So where do you see the greatest opportunities going to be to support the sector directly, Michael?
In providing physical facilities for people to operate in. So that could be a glass house, or it could be a polytunnel or a lab or a workshop. And particularly where either the facility or the equipment in it is just too expensive for a single, you know, for a startup particularly to really have. So I mean, a fully all singing, all dancing research grade glass house is a very expensive bit of kit, and you can't, you know, a startup just can't get them. And I'm not talking about office space. You know, office space is easy to find. It's these bits that you just, you know, there are only a relatively small number of them in the country, and getting access to them is hard because they're you know, they're heavily used. So actually finding a route whereby organizations can pool that kind of resource or make it available. And that also goes through to test and trial plots. And farmers are often very willing to trial new things on their land. It does depend on what time of year it is and those kind of things. But again, having some access to those kind of facilities is important. And you do see a lot of issues for startups just getting their hands on a piece of kit or access to a physical facility.
Fab. So you highlighted Belinda as the networking lady who may be expert in the room. So Belinda, what do you think as regarding the collaborative approach then? Is networking going to be a big part of this, or what other opportunities are there for collaboration?
Well, of course, I would say that, wouldn't I? And you know, people tend to not know who they don't know, and I think that's probably what we're all trying to help achieve and to demystify. And we've got, you know, put a number of structures in place to try and help bridge either the culture gap or the vocabulary gap or the technology gap between these different communities in the ecosystem. And I've thought a lot about this, and you know, we get asked this a lot: what would be the kind of the big silver bullet solution to fix it all? And you know, there's obviously, just the people on this call, there's a lot of facilities around, there's a lot of incubators, there is actually quite a lot of investment around for good quality deals, and I'm going to say leadership actually in the I think if you look at the really successful early stage ventures, and I won't name them, but they tend to be led by people who are very strong leaders, perhaps have experience in other sectors, and are bringing that knowledge and leadership. So I think we have a pipeline, we've got facilities, we've got an enabling environment, and we've got networks, we've got farmers who have an appetite for technology. But I think where I think we have a real chance to move the needle is around supporting great leaders to bring forward these businesses, and there are some fantastic examples around, and let's clone them and have them heading up more businesses.
Brilliant. So from yourself then, Sarah, sort of what do you see the future looking like for AgriTech then? What do you see will be perhaps the next best thing or the next great thing that's going to come out of this collaboration and this network, and like ourselves all talking today?
Yeah, that is such a huge question. I think one really key area is, you know, we've talked about all these different networks. There's us in the room today, there's the farmers, there's the businesses. How can a farmer, you know, if they want to adopt certain technology, or if they don't know they want to adopt tech, they want to learn more, where can they go? You know, the one place they can go to find out who that is, who they should be speaking to. Yes, they could in theory come to any of us, but again, it links back to what we were saying with there being so many options out there. is there sort of one platform where they can come and see what's out there? They can see testimonials from other farmers. They can see what their neighbours have been doing. That very much sort of sharing that knowledge exchange is really key. Feeling like you're alone and that you're the only one adopting this technology and that you're the first one to do it is really quite scary. So to be able to find that place, that one hub where they can see how the tech has helped, they can actually see the real results, is really key. And I know that trials obviously help massively, and it's so important, but often there's that sort of struggle from going to a trial to full scale. And it absolutely links back to what Michael was saying about the land. You know, I have so many startups coming to me looking for land to use, whether it's to rent or just to test something on for a day or to buy even. And finding the opportunity to link them up with landowners or whoever it is a bit of a challenge. So yeah, to have that, I guess, yeah, the one-stop solution would be an easy form of communication between all different parties would be ideal. It would be the dream, really.
I think it links back to where we were set off when we were talking about data. You know, it's all around data. There's so much of it. There's so much out there, but how do we actually access? And again, that plug-in, I need to be able to have a simple action that plugs me into where I want to be. And I heard a good analogy from a startup business the other day. He said, I'm starting from scratch. So if you take me back to let's say the early 1900s, I've got my OS map out there. I set off on that OS map and suddenly there's a diversion and I actually don't know where I'm going and where I'm going to end up. Whereas if somebody's done it before, it's almost, and again, there's other things available, plugging into Google Maps and it'll automatically give me the right diversion to where I want to get to. So as you say, there's a lot of things out there that can confuse and overwhelm a lot of people within the sector. So talking about sort of technological developments and where we're going to, are there any areas that you've seen recently, perhaps Belinda, that have got highlighted maybe for immediate commercial use?
Well, I guess going back to your earlier question, there are some really quite exciting solutions out there around people really getting their arms around the carbon question. And that is now being used on farm. The big question around that then comes back to the policy enabler. What's that going to mean for farmers? How much are they going to get to sequester a ton of carbon or whatever? So while the technology's there, we're now waiting for the enabling policy to be there to actually give some clarity on how to monetize what the technology is able to do. So I think that's a watch and wait. I just wanted to pick up on something that Sarah said and remind everyone on the call about the plans for the Evidence for Farming initiative that AHDB and NFU are leading on, which is attempting to try and tackle this sort of one-stop shop where you can share some examples of how things have worked. I won't bore everybody with all of the details, but AHDB and NFU are leading on that. But yeah, so I think it's the things that are ready to go are around carbon and this business about bringing biology and chemistry and physics actually together. And then of course you put in a dash of social science to understand farmer behavior and motivation and drivers of business people. And I think that's where the successful businesses are deploying a lot of those different strands.
And have you anything to add on that one, Michael?
It's interesting that Belinda mentions the different disciplines. I mean, every now and then I get asked, so NIAB has very close relationships with Cambridge University, and in particular historic relationships with the Plant Sciences Department, where we've done a lot of work when we got a lot of their PhD students, etc. And then people say to me, do you work with any of the other bits? And if I look at what we're doing now, we already work with engineering, with physics, with the computer lab, with the business school particularly, occasionally with some of the people in the medical school. And if I had to guess where I think the bulk of our work, our collaborations will be in the future, I'd probably say engineering, physics, and the computer lab, because plant sciences, don't get me wrong, we have a lovely time with them and it's very important, but I think the real changes are going to come from other areas in the future. And yes, we're a crop science research centre, but it doesn't mean that we have, I think people shouldn't think that farming in general should be constrained by crops and soil. You've got to look at a much wider range of opportunities. So I think that's actually quite exciting as well for the industry, because it's ripe for a lot of external new thinking to come in.
Brilliant. So I'm really, really passionate, as are all of you in this room, about the sustainability and the growth of the sector. So probably just sort of in a short paragraph, or tell me what you enjoy most about the role, day to day or longer term. Sarah, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, sure. What I really love is just meeting new startups. Even if someone's already doing this technology, it's always different. The tech can be the same, but the uniqueness comes from how they're delivering that, how they're going about their business model. And for me, that's so exciting to see. And every week I'm shocked, there's a new idea and I think, gosh, I didn't even know that was possible. And that's so exciting. I don't think there's many industries where you can get that sort of excitement from somebody else's business, to see, actually going forwards in the future, we can make a positive change to the future of food and farming. We can improve our food supply chains. We can do all of this stuff. And there are some really, really passionate individuals or groups of people out there who want to make a difference. And yes, of course, we talked about so many challenges and about how we need to collaborate more. But actually, the ideas is such a great place to start. And for me, that's what I'm really passionate about in my role, seeing these companies grow, coming to us with an idea maybe 4 years ago, and now having loads of customers going out there speaking to farmers. The PR is fantastic. They really know what they're talking about, and they've really grown, and they've made a difference, and that's what they set out to achieve. I think that personally for me is a really great part of this role.
Fab. And yourself, Belinda, what gets you up in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, the narrative about our industry kind of sells itself, and particularly since the pandemic, there's nothing like, and indeed Brexit, there's nothing like things you can't get at the supermarket to really focus people's minds on the food and farming, so the agri-food value chain. And it feels like such a privilege to be playing a small part in what is in effect, one of the oldest industries, and watching the trajectory of it. And seeing, I think what I like best is seeing new technology sitting alongside existing knowledge, because this isn't about bringing in a whizzy new robot to farm fields without anybody being near them. This is about really harnessing the agronomist's eye, the herdsman's head, all of that sort of intangible stuff, and using the technology alongside that. And I think that is it's a real privilege to be at that inflection point in the industry, I think.
Fab. And yourself, Michael, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Apart from the school run mostly, but I think a bit sort of echoing what Belinda and Sarah have said, which is that it's just a nice industry to work in. I've worked in lots of industries, and some of them are really quite unpleasant, where the people are sort of stabbing you in the back every time you turn around. And whereas I think in agriculture, everyone really is quite keen that everyone does well. We sit here, we've got arguably sort of competitors sitting around having a useful chat. We're all pushing people to each other's, I think you'd be better off at Farm 491, or I think it'd be really good for you to go and talk to the people at Eagle Labs, or you should join AgriTech E. It's quite common, it's just how it works. And so it's just a nice atmosphere. The other thing I think is that, and again, probably not with my director of commercialization hat on, but they're not purely motivated by the money. They actually genuinely want to do useful things for farming and also for the food supply chain, and indeed for the environment. So it's just refreshing. And yes, if people do well, they should make money out of it, but that's not the driver. What they're trying to do is have an impact. Again, just massively refreshing compared to other industries I've had the misfortune to work in. I'm not going to name the legal industry in that conversation, but it's it's chalk and cheese.
We all work together, and I say more so understanding, the expertise in the room, but it is so nice. So probably I'm going to ask yourself, Belinda, first, if you were able to give one piece of advice to those new startups that are entering into either the agri-food or the agri-tech industry, what would it be? What would you tell them?
Well, obviously, the first thing I would say is join AgriTech E, have an office in either Farm 491 or Barn 4, and talk to my colleagues and the accelerator program that Eagle is running. Once we'd had that conversation, and then actually that's not said entirely in jest, it really is, harness the support that's out there, because there is a lot out there. And so I'm not entirely joking on that. I would say keep your powder dry in terms of talking to investors until you are really confident in your value proposition, because I get people coming who say, we want to raise 3 million in their first round, and it's, it needs some sharpening, it needs chunking down, and there are people who can help that, but don't go rushing off asking investors for a lot of money without having really kicked the tires of your own value proposition and being really confident in it, that you would die in a ditch for the business that you are starting. That's where you need to be before you start talking to investors.
Fab. And from yourself, Sarah, one piece of advice would you give a startup?
Yeah, I would say don't expect quick results. I think agriculture and agri-tech is a sector where it's not linear, it's backwards and forwards, it's up and down, and it's not going to be a quick win. So take your time. I know that there's a lot of companies out there and you want to be the first one to the market, you want to be the best one out there, but take your time, go and speak to farmers, go and do your market research. If you're trying to solve a problem that isn't really there, you won't succeed anyway. So there's no point in rushing to create your tech. There's no point in rushing to force it out there into the market. Go and do your research, find out what you really need to do, find out the problem you're really solving, and then use the network, like Belinda said, use all of us. We're all here to support them, and we've all got the same vision to help them to grow and scale. So we're all here, the farmers are there, they've got the problems, go and speak to them, and then you'll know what to do with your business model.
Fab. And yourself, Michael?
It's always hard being last one on these things, because I completely agree with everything Belinda and Sarah have said. I think the other thing I'd say, which actually is advice for any small company, doesn't have to be in the agri-tech sector, which is think about how you make money from your customers rather than thinking about your next funding round or how you get your next grant. I see an awful lot of companies that have almost become addicted to the drug that is investment money and the drug that is grant money. And if you can't make money from your customers, you haven't got a business. At some stage, you've got to sell something to your customers that they want and they're willing to pay for. And so I really would, it's something I'm getting more and more sort of vocal about, I think, is you should have a business plan that can almost work without investment or grant money. Having said that, I'm going to, at the end of this call, I'm back to writing grant applications, but the point is they should only really be for acceleration. They shouldn't be the critical thing you need to achieve. The critical thing you need to achieve is to sell something. So that'd be my one bit of advice.
Brilliant. I've absolutely loved you taking all time out of your busy schedules today to join us. I would just like to say a massive thank you, Belinda, a massive thank you, Michael and Sarah. So if anybody is watching this and wants to get in contact with these guys, please do obviously drop us a line. So events like today and the AgriTech Awareness Week, in fact, any of the events that any of us do in this room, we can only do that and we can only grow and change and deliver what you want to see if you tell us. So shortly after the end of this event, there will be a QR code comes up. We'll be asking for your feedback. We want to know, as I say, what you want to see for future events and how you think perhaps we could work more collaboratively together. So final word is literally a great big thank you from myself to yourself, Belinda, to you, Sarah, and to you, Michael. I've really appreciated it. And I look forward to joining some of those dots on the spider's webs. And as you say, co-opetition, interoperability, whatever you want to call it, it is a brilliant sector to work in. And you've got the best literally here to speak and listen to today. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.